If I am taking complete...
You took my soapbox.
Oh, yeah. Give me the soapbox. Give it to me. You can have it on the next one.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome again to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is David Sims from HIPAA for MSPs, and joining me as always is Donna Grindle from Cardin Compliance. How's it going, Donna?
It is going great, David. How are you?
I am very well. I'm glad the weather has cleared up some. Last week we had a little bit of ice down here. I don't really like that kind of weather.
Me either.
Very much a spring and summer type person.
Yeah, me too.
So, and of course we still have some threats of some winter weather coming, but this weekend it's going to be close to 70 degrees in February, or actually into January.
Wow. See, there's our indicator. Maybe we'll release this one in like April. I don't know.
Yeah, there we go.
Everybody can remember when.
Yeah. So I wanted to mention before we get started that we do have the ability for listeners to go to iTunes and review the podcast there and tell us how you like it. If you like it, don't like it. If you don't like it, don't even put it there. Just email us and we'll deal with you. We'll deal with you separately. But no, we've had a lot of positive feedback, and a lot of people email and catch us in other forums and talk about the show. And of course, by doing the reviews, number one, it's kind of what we're working for. You know, we don't really work for money, so we work for reviews. So it's kind of your way of paying back, you know, the investment that we put out there for your benefit. But it also helps other people find the show, and if you know whether they know something about it or not, they can read the reviews and kind of get an idea of whether or not it's something they want to invest their time into to listen as well. So if you haven't left us a review, please do that. It does help a lot, and we have gained new listeners due to your reviews. So we thank you a lot for that.
And share us, tweet us. And
share the show. You can't share me. You can share the show. I'm shared out.
Yeah, so share us and tweet us and Facebook us and Google Plus us or whatever means you share with people.
Snapchat us.
LinkedIn
Periscope
us. Yeah, Periscope us. That's our next thing, Periscope.
YouTube us.
I think we're just going to start doing a Periscope from time to time of us recording.
Yeah, we could do that. Or we can blab. Yeah, we can do blab. What else I got?
Well, we already blab.
So, you know, Facebook has live video streaming now.
Yeah, we would have to, you know, like do our hair.
Yeah, I have to actually work outside of normal attire.
Yeah. So, but we have a lot of stuff to talk about today, so we better not be screwing around like we normally do.
That's going to be hard. All right, so we're going to dive into something that will probably get under both of our skin at some point during the conversation, which is vendors.
Yes.
Oh man, I think we talk about this weekly, that a vendor has come out with something that blows your mind.
Yes.
As to what they say they can do, or you know, they can make HIPAA easy and all this,
or they're certified HIPAA compliant.
Yeah, it's just crazy stuff. So one thing we want to do is help listeners to be able to understand a solution or a way that you can vet those vendors to make sure that they are HIPAA compliant and that you've done your due diligence. Because we've talked before about due diligence, but I don't think we've ever really kind of did a deeper dive into what all that means. And we'll bring up some topics, I'm sure, and some cases where people have said that they were compliant and didn't quite work out so well.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah. So with that, I'll let you talk about our first case.
So recently, the FTC, and you know, who would have thought that we would be so intertwined with the FTC? But lately, they're moving more and more into HIPAA claims being considered consumer fraud. And that was brought up against Henry Schein Practice Solutions. They just settled with the FTC for $250,000 on a claim because they claimed that their Dentrix G5 software was HIPAA compliant using industry standard encryption. Now, industry standard encryption, we all know, we talk about it in our encryption discussions. It should say something about, and we even tell people, look for AES. We say, look for AES. It should say AES. In our other podcasts, we've talked about that. So that would be what would be considered the industry standard, specifically for things like HIPAA compliance. Well, turns out,
there we go.
yeah, that they were using a third-party database engine, which, all the software companies, they don't, you have to have a database engine, and they're going to use some vendor's solution. This particular vendor, which they didn't mention because the vendor didn't really do anything wrong, this vendor tells the Henry Schein folks, by the by, our encryption solution is a proprietary algorithm we developed ourselves. It hasn't been tested publicly, meaning it hasn't been vetted by the industry, and that it's less secure and more vulnerable than widely used industry standard encryption algorithms such as
AES.
Yay! And so they told them flat out from the get-go, if you use our solution, you're not really going to meet these encryption standards that we think you're supposed to. So they were covering themselves quite well.
So this was from the beginning, not after the fact.
Right. So it's when they were developing it and talking to them, and they're telling them, and somewhere somebody, probably not necessarily a technical person, decided, oh, we're fine. We don't have to worry about it. So,
but it's cheaper. It's a free solution. No, I don't know that. I'm just saying.
So they said, this is not something we have to worry about. And the FTC has said, nay, you cannot come out and say that you have a quote unquote HIPAA compliant solution, which is what they told people. And they put it in their, sales literature that, we handle the encryption and we do all of this for you and you don't have anything to worry about. And that was just flat out a lie. They knew it. They were told. And the vendor still came out and told everybody they were. So here is one of our top reasons, because went on for a while and tons of dentists had signed up for this solution and then learned, wait, we're not HIPAA compliant? Now what are you going to do, vendor? So, and these software vendors, they sign a BAA and they sell their solution with, all these claims. So, think about somebody saying, selling you a car and they say that it meets industry standard safety requirements. And then you find out, well, no, not so much. It meets Bubba's safety requirements. He checked it out and he said when he wrecked it, he lived all right. He used his assessment. So, that whole claim was false, and they were found for false advertising and deceiving their customers. So $250,000 cha-ching, and that's going to be, I would wager, I don't know about you, David, but I would say that we're going to find more of that happen unless this makes vendors heed. But they've sold it. They've already sold it. They've done it.
Yeah. And this very much hurts the whole cloud computing adoption that a lot of people are moving to. Some people love it. Some people hate it. But it, whether you're a proponent of it or you're not, it does hurt those people that are really trying to have a secure cloud-based solution, because ultimately the question that you're going to get asked, if we were doing a live broadcast right now with people, they're going to ask, okay, well, how are we supposed to know as a covered entity, a small practice, how are we supposed to know that these people aren't doing what they told us they were doing?
Well, that's why we say you get that. You need to vet these vendors, and we're going to talk in some more detail about how you go about that in a minute, but you need to ask them questions. What makes you HIPAA compliant? And definitely if somebody says they are a HIPAA certified anything, there is, there are, you can just decide today, I am a certifying entity and I have certified myself to be HIPAA compliant, and therefore I am HIPAA certified. So if somebody says they are, you have to know who certified them and what standards were required for that certification, because anybody can decide they're HIPAA certified. There's no such thing as a HIPAA certification that is approved by HHS or OCR. So just using one of those gets you nowhere. So you can't take them for their word if they sign a BAA. You can't take them for their word if they say they're HIPAA compliant. And you definitely can't take them for their word if they say they are HIPAA certified.
Or they hang the plaque on the wall that says, we're HIPAA certified 2015. You remember seeing that?
Yes, we did. Yes.
But the reason, I guess, for people who are listening, the reason why you can't do that is because you can be HIPAA compliant today and then not tomorrow.
Right.
So there's no way somebody can, I mean, you could come in, I guess, technically and say, as of this minute, you are HIPAA certified. Mm-hmm. Now, 5 minutes from now when I leave, somebody could do something stupid and blow it all out of the water.
Right. Well, I mean, I have, I'm certified in healthcare privacy compliance by the Compliance Certification Board, which is entity that works with Healthcare Compliance Association. So I say I have this certification, but here's who I got it from. Mm-hmm. I'm not claiming this just because so you should always know where that certification is coming from and what are the standards. I mean, I have to meet CEUs and I sat for an exam and all that kind of stuff. I didn't just run a program and kick out a thing and everybody went, yep, you're certified. Here it is. Download it and print it out.
Yeah.
And there are some that you get that way, and they're not the ones that, they don't require, they're designed to make certification companies money.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I mean, even we have a certification with HIPAA for MSPs where we certify IT professionals and managed service providers that go through our program. Mm-hmm. But we make it abundantly clear that the certification is that they took the course, they understood the material, and were able to demonstrate a level of proficiency in an exam. We don't certify they're compliant. We certify that they have a level of understanding and knowledge of HIPAA compliance within their business.
Yeah, I mean, we make the test, and actually, I think the first round of the test was really too hard once I went back and took it myself. I mean, I could answer it, but then I was thinking, wow, maybe people wouldn't know this if they aren't at that level, but they would be, they knew it enough if they knew a lower level of that same answer. So, but again, we say, even on the certification thing, it says by HIPAA for MSP. So that's the important part. Mm-hmm. And by the way, in our encryption, talking about our encryption episode where we talked about using at a minimum the Windows file and folder encryption, the encrypted file system, mm-hmm. I did get the information to verify this, that the industry standard AES 256 is the default that's built into Windows, well, at least Windows above XP. Because
not including Vista, it doesn't exist.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So 7, 8, 10.
Yeah, we'll say that. But the default is AES 256. Before that, it used a different algorithm, but it was still an industry standard one. It wasn't a proprietary algorithm. Mm-hmm. So clearly, the need for using industry standards really matters. And with the things that we've always talked about, we say, look for AES 256. Look for these kinds of terms in your contract. And if you don't see they're encrypted with AES 256, it's time to ask a lot more questions, or it's time to take a pass.
So you bring up the XP machines, which I think is funny in that people still think that that's okay.
Yeah, I know. It's 2 years. It's now 2 years that you're supposed to have been gotten rid of all these machines because Microsoft said, we're not going to support it anymore. We're not going to give you security updates. No.
Right. No more updates. It can't be secure. Any holes or bugs that are found, and there are plenty still in there, they're not going to fix them. They're not going to do anything about them. And they will definitely cause a breach.
It's basically been said. And so, we've had articles going way back about, XP is gone. And so if you're using XP, you can't possibly meet HIPAA compliant solutions. And there was even a resolution. There was a OCR resolution that said they were using an XP computer, and that's what caused the breach, and therefore they were out of compliance.
So that's one easy question you can ask right there.
Yeah. So that's a perfect segue into the next conversation, actually. It just happened, and yeah, granted it was in Australia, but it doesn't mean it's not a technology problem that could happen here.
They have Windows in Australia?
That's right. Those Aussies, they're on top of things. So it hit the news. I mean, while it was actually happening, it hit the news that said one of their largest hospitals in Melbourne. So we're not talking some tiny space in the outback. The network was shut down by a virus outbreak from XP computers.
Plural.
Yes. Plural.
More than one.
Yeah. And it was a problem that, had been around for a while, but it infected their XP computers. And we run into that all the time. That says, we have a case where they say, well, it's just over there serving some files for us. We don't really use it for anything. If it's connected to your network, you're using it. You just don't know it.
Or you're holding on to that old EHR program from 10 years ago that you don't want to get rid of.
And we can't upgrade it because if we upgrade it, it won't work anymore. They don't have, or, there's a big problem with it running equipment. So like an old something in the lab or radiology or something like that, where the vendor will say, hey, we don't make a updated version, so you have to keep it on Windows XP. You should be pushing that vendor because all they're doing is saying you got to buy a new machine from us because we're not going to support the security properly. So you're in a bind if they've left you there. But at the same time, when did XP come out? Like 2001?
Yeah, I think so. It's been a long time ago. A long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, it was, it came out after Windows ME, which was the Millennium Edition. So I don't know if you remember that one.
I do remember that one.
Yeah.
I actually liked it, but a lot of people didn't.
Well, it was the predecessor, and it's where they actually cleaned up a few things on there. But I mean, it goes back so far that's where it first started fully supporting USB. So, I mean, this is something that's been around forever. And in the computer world, we know that within 3 years, it's a complete refresh.
Yeah.
So, to have something that is now 15 years old sitting on your network, and you've been told that it's not secure is almost, to me, it's just flipping your nose, we'll say, in the eye of what you're supposed to do. And so, and because the hospital in Australia, it said it started in the pathology department, which makes me think it had something to do with a device that was connected with, some sort of lab equipment or something like that. But they started out, they were having the critically abnormal stuff. We're having to call people up to tell them in intensive care or in the emergency room what they were finding on these chemistry, the biochemistry, the hematology, those kind of things. They're having to go old school and fax them over and this kind of stuff because they had shut down the entire network, and they were telling the staff, don't you try to fix it. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. Don't go anywhere. Don't do anything. Don't disconnect it because we'll have to turn it back on and that'll ramp it back up. And the tech team, they were still cleaning it up. And I love the announcement the next day. It was, as of 10 a.m. this morning, many programs affected by the virus are up and running, including pathology and pharmacy.
Wow.
Yeah. And then here's the thing. In another article, a reporter asked, the person about the hospital response, and it said, when asked if the virus would jeopardize the safety and privacy of patients' records, she made no comment. She said no comment. So if you're asking a vendor and your vendor is telling you that you have to use XP, you need to be dealing with that. Either if you're using it for your own, because we did find clients of ours where we did the scan and we're like, there's an XP computer out there. We didn't know about that. You didn't tell us about that when we were doing the assessment. And we're like, that has to be taken down today. I don't know what you're using it for. Oh, well, it just holds some files and we hadn't moved them. Now, do it now. See you bye. Call me when it's done. Because, and now you got to do a whole lot more stuff to verify that nothing's happened. So XP, this is another reason you want to find out, because there's devices that have embedded XP. And you want to know, if you're buying a device that you can interface with, what does it run? How is it secure? Because if it has some sort of keyboard, there's drug inventory systems, these giant systems, and you go and you type some stuff and there's an interface maybe with your practice management or your EMR that's feeding the information in there. But that tells you it's communicating and it's on your network. So what is it running? How is it secured? You've got to ask these vendors and hold their feet to the fire to make them tell you how they're protecting the information, because you're the one left hanging.
Yeah. And just on a side note, I have to say this because it's one of those roll my eye type things when I hear it. But, we said a lot about XP, but please be sure to understand, if you're running an Apple product, it will get viruses. I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody go, I'm a Mac, so I don't really have to worry about viruses. There were more viruses created for Apple products last year than in the entire history of the Apple product line. Oh, yeah, because they're going further and further connectivity, and that's made a difference. It is not as vulnerable as, a Unix, Linux platform, a Windows platform, but it doesn't mean that you don't need an antivirus product. No. Yeah, definitely should have an antivirus product. I mean, when you look at vendors who put out antivirus software, they have Mac versions, which kind of would tell you something. Yeah, they're not just trying to steal your money. And Apple does security updates. They should be installed just like Windows patches should be. Mm-hmm. Now, they're different and they're not as many. I mean, as you say it, I have an itty-bitty computer. I have a MacBook Air. And you make fun of my itty-bitty computer. But I'm constantly monitoring the things on it just like I do the others. I don't assume, because it's an Apple device, that I have no danger. So that gets us perfectly to segue of the other problem about IT companies are not immune to this, where they say, we're a HIPAA compliant IT provider. Or HIPAA doesn't apply to me. Or, we're better than HIPAA. HIPAA doesn't apply to us because we don't store PHI. Now, let's just review for a second. If I am taking complete... You took my soapbox. Oh, yeah. Give me the soapbox. Give it to me. You can have it on the next one. Funk. Knocking you right off it before you can even get on it, because this one has just really been under my skin lately. If you have an IT vendor, they need to have complete control of your firewall, your network devices, your administrator access to everything you have. Is that correct, David, being an IT provider? That is absolutely correct. I mean, I can't do my job unless I have access to all that. Yeah, and complete control. Mm-hmm. And if you want me to have complete control when things go wrong and you're not there, then I have to have it all the time. So in order to do that, I then can control what anyone can do. Whether or not I'm storing PHI becomes totally irrelevant, because now I have access to millions. I have millions, literally millions of records for patients, because I have administrative level access to all of these client sites. And to say that means I don't have to do HIPAA, again, it's unethical, in my opinion. And you and I feel the same way about it, is to say, oh, well, I'll sign a BAA, but I'm not doing it. What? And people will say it and then not have anything in place. And people make mistakes. I'm not saying they don't make mistakes, but for you to say we don't need it because our security is better, it's not just about security. It's about making sure that your people understand if I see something, or if I'm at a doctor's site and I see my neighbor at the oncologist and I didn't know they had cancer, I can't go home and tell everybody they had cancer. I can't look up their record. I can't do those things. I can't just
pop something on an unencrypted jump drive and take it back to the office because I know I won't lose it and I know nothing will happen to it. You can't do those things, and your staff needs to understand that and know it, and they need to understand the concept of minimum uses and disclosures. Plus, this whole thing, that I don't need to have a breach response plan, and number of people that tell me not applicable. It doesn't apply to me. Why? Well, we don't have to do the response. They've made it clear that the clients can come back and put that responsibility back on a business associate to do the notifications, number one. And number two, you're telling me if you have a big breach, you're not going to need to respond to it. You're not going to have to tell all your clients and have to figure out how to deal with all of their needs. You're not going to have anybody knocking on your door. There's a company in Indiana, MedInformatica, something like that is a vendor that had a huge breach, and it's, tons, all of their clients they had to deal with. So to say not applicable, how can you do that? Again, irresponsible behavior. Because it's inconvenient does not mean it's acceptable. And so for you to say you're HIPAA compliant, or even worse, HIPAA certified, yet you can't answer a few questions about your HIPAA compliance program, and then you proceed to say that they're not applicable, we're above and beyond that. No.
Or here's something we've heard often. The due diligence questionnaire is too intrusive.
Yeah. You're asking me for proprietary things. No, I said, have you done a risk analysis? That's it. Well, I'm not telling you. All you have to say is yes or no. And then there's multiple methods of doing it, because they are. They can go about it any number of ways. There are multiple ways you can go about it. There's a lot of methodology. And there's a lot of methodology about this. If you did one, what methodology you use? Well, that's proprietary, and if I told you, then that would be breaking my security. To say what framework you use? Please. No. That's just telling me that you are A, arrogant, and B, not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So anyhow, because, I have plenty of people that never skip a beat. They answer the thing and they're fine. They have no problem. Anybody that's pitching a fit about doing it, that red flags left and right. Just throw them out all over the place. Yeah, just put red flags all around that person. Okay, I'm down now. I'm down. You can.
You sure?
I'm done. I'm done.
You need some. You need to take some medicine.
Yeah, I do.
Some blood pressure down.
I do.
The sad thing is watching the covered entities or other business associates try to deal with these IT vendors, because they don't just initially go, "Oh, well, you want to answer this? Then screw you. I'm going somewhere else."
Right. They're stunned by it.
I wish they would do that, but typically what they do is go, we would really like to continue doing business with you. Can you get this under control? And I understand that changing IT vendors is not a minor thing, but at the same time, if they're not taking that part of your business seriously and dealing with you as their client, what else are they not doing? I just recently took a client over from another IT company, and I told them, I said, okay, so every month we're going to send you a monthly report, and we're going to go over some compliance things with you. And they were like, well, our other IT company never did that.
I know.
And I was like, they didn't even send you reports? And they were like, no. I was like, so were they not compliant? I know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
And they said, oh yeah, they do a lot of medical practices.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh.
I don't have to answer this because none of my other medical people have asked me to answer it, and I have plenty of them. That makes it okay? Really?
Yeah. We don't do security for other clients, so why should we do it for you?
Yeah. We don't need to do this for our other medical people, and we have much bigger clients than this. Oh my God.
Yes. Anyway, let's move on. We could honestly spend a long time.
Yeah. Well,
talking
every time we get an opportunity, we go nuts on that one topic. So,
yeah,
I think everybody knows how we feel about it. But let's go to the next one, because this one is your favorite. And I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to push over the soapbox, and there you go. Hop up on that baby. Hop up on it.
Okay. So what are we doing?
HIPAA is easy, David. HIPAA is easy.
God.
Off you go.
So I look in my email. I think it was yesterday, actually. I look in my email and because I get notifications about all type of HIPAA stuff on the web. If you type HIPAA, it's going to probably show up in my inbox. And one of the first things I saw that jumped out at me was a company says, "We will make your practice compliant within 72 hours."
Yeah.
And all over the place, I see this, HIPAA made easy, buy our program, buy our software, buy our solution, hire our company. We make HIPAA easy. I'm sorry to tell you, HIPAA's not easy. There's things that can make it easier. Mm-hmm. There are things that can make it less complicated. There's a lot of hand-holding that can be done. But for somebody to sit there and tell you to buy this silver bullet and, we can have your compliance done in a snap. Run this report and that's all you need. Put this tool on your network and you're compliant. Mm-hmm. Use our EHR program and that's all you have to do. All that stuff drives me nuts because there is nothing out there, and there will never be anything out there that is a one and done solution to do all of your compliance. It can't happen.
There's people that say, well, we'll take care of your HIPAA for you. And it's, when you start asking questions, well, we just do the privacy part. You need your IT vendor to do the security part. Or we just do the security part. You already have the privacy part, right? And nobody does the breach stuff. So, yeah, go on. Just talk about how easy it is.
Yeah, it's just not. It's just not easy. Now, you have two different, spectrums with it. I guess with anything, you'll have people on each end, way far into the field, the people that, we can get you compliant in 72 hours or less. I don't even know people that can write a policy in 72 hours or less, much less do the entire compliance. And then on the other side of it, you have those people that are fear-mongering and you can't possibly ever get HIPAA compliant, which, I know that's kind of subjective term there to a degree, and we can argue that point, but they make it seem like it's such a daunting task that people shut down and they won't even try to even get started with it. And that's the point that bothers me on that end of it. And we preach that here on this show that it can be done and it's not, so difficult that you can't tackle it, but you do have to give it some attention and you do have to put some time aside and you do have to do it intentionally. You can't just say, well, I think I'll do my HIPAA compliance this weekend. No, sorry, that ain't going to happen.
Yeah. It's not, I'm going to knock this out. It's an ongoing process. You do it over and over. And that one that, you found and you immediately sent to me because you knew we would both enjoy it. I did do some digging on it, and I was talking to Jerry Blast from Comply Assistant and told him about it. And because one of the claims was that for a small entity, and that's what this thing was targeted at once we started reading about it, a small entity, up to 40% of it is not appropriate to a small entity. And so I'm like, how can it, okay, first of all, the security rule is only 8 pages of the whole law. And because it's very gray and all of that. So 40% of that's half of it. So I'm like, how could they possibly, keep digging to see exactly what they're saying. And the net of it is they were taking the NIST guide on doing HIPAA, which, we use, we're familiar with, and it has a ton of questions, example questions to ask for each of the different rules. And a lot of people use that, and we use a lot of that in our assessments. But basically, there's a big chunk of those tons of questions, the example questions they listed that wouldn't apply to small entities. So we don't even put them in our assessments. We don't even, that doesn't apply to a small entity. So but I don't talk about how I take those out because you're small. I just skip them because you're small. But so to say that, it can be, but it's not 40% of the HIPAA rule. It's not false advertising. If you read it enough, you figure it out. Mm-hmm. But it's that headline. And we know in our society today, what does everybody read? The headline.
Yeah, the headline is it. Yeah.
It's a headline.
And it's always we've heard this for years. The devil's in the details, and the small print that always gets you, and it's still true today. We were looking at a website together a couple of months ago, and it was talking about, buy this solution, run this tool, and you'll have everything you need for HIPAA compliance. And now, actually, when we go back to that website, it doesn't say that anymore.
I know, they've changed their
Maybe
minds.
they listen to our podcast. I don't know. But yeah, it doesn't really say it that way anymore. But here's the thing with it, and I've seen this happen too, is that it's not what they say, it's what they don't say.
Yeah.
That you have to also kind of read between the lines sometimes.
Yeah, and and they'll come in and give you that, and then they just, I was just talking to somebody this week that's, talking to us about helping them stuff. And they said, well, we had an assessment done, and the guy was really, really nice and knowledgeable, and came in and gave us this huge binder with all this information in it and gave us a plan. But we haven't done any of it. We don't know how, Mm-hmm. And the guy's like, kind of like, I'll see you next year.
Yeah.
And so that's what a lot of people do, because it is hard. If it were easy, then more people would be actually helping you do the work like we do. And that's why, everybody's like, well, I don't know how you're going to be able to, make a lot of money at this. Probably not, but at least I feel good about what I'm doing and actually worrying about protecting patient information. So we have rambled on this one, and we haven't really talked about how to vet the vendors specifically. So,
and let me say one more thing.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Before we do that.
Sorry.
Because, and the reason I even want to bring this up, because it kind of just popped into my head, that as HIPAA gets more and more popular among the vendors that are outside of healthcare, particularly IT, it is something that we in the IT field didn't hear anything about hardly until 2013 and 2014, really. And now we hear it all the time. But a lot of what we hear in the IT realm is there are people out there that need HIPAA solutions. They don't say HIPAA compliant IT. They need HIPAA solutions. So go out there and sell HIPAA solutions.
Right.
And most of the time, 99% of the time, there is no discussion around what do you need to do before you're able to really offer those solutions. And so you're going to have people that come out. Sometimes they may be IT vendors. Sometimes they may be other people who just decided that I'm hearing a lot about HIPAA, so I think I'll just be a compliance officer and start selling my consulting, because we've heard that too. Mm-hmm. I know I worked in a hospital mopping the floors, and now I want to be a compliance officer or whatever. But but make sure that the people that are coming in to help you with your compliance actually know something about compliance. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have heard a number of people who have told me, I'm going to go in and I'm going to do a full risk assessment for a client. And I'm like, oh, cool. You can do that? You know enough to actually pull off a full risk assessment? Not talking about a security or an IT risk assessment, but a full HIPAA risk assessment. You can do that? And they're like, well, I got a book. I went through a course. I downloaded some templates. Come on now, really? They're doing such a disservice to the market, to the clients out there. It drives me nuts, because it's not easy. I mean, I think I'm probably one of the most versed people in the IT industry on HIPAA. I'm not, one of the big gurus out there, but I think I'm fairly up there with what I know for a small IT company. And I don't do these full-blown HIPAA assessments. I outsource those to card and compliance, because that's just not my forte. That's not what I want to be focused on. And I think my clients are better served having somebody that's been doing it for umpteen years.
Hey, now.
Been doing it for 70 years. And that can look over my shoulder and make sure that's being done right. It makes no sense for me to walk into my client's IT environment and say, yep, your IT stuff looks great. I audited it.
Yeah.
I'm auditing my own stuff.
Yeah, I'm telling you I'm doing the right things. And then that's a big piece. So when you go in to your client or your prospects, you're telling them up front, look, I know about HIPAA, so I'm not going to try to tell you it's easy. And so that in itself is an indicator that you really do know about it. And, the thing I told you when I was making up the show notes for this episode, it occurred to me what we should be saying, because we say trust but verify with your BAs. You can't just say, oh, well, all right, well, they signed the BAA, we're good to go, because you're not. And that's putting a lot of trust in places that you shouldn't, because you're supposed to be protecting your patients and your business. So to assume that these people who have never had to be responsible until the last 2 years know better than you, and let me just say, most of you covered entities haven't really been until the last few years focused on doing this. And some of you still aren't. So to think that they're going to do it better than you, step back for a minute. And we say trust but verify. You can't just assume it. But the thing that occurred to me is we tell everybody the OCR is going to come in. If they walk into your organization, they're not just going to go, are you HIPAA compliant? They're going to say you need to prove it. Mm-hmm. Don't tell me you're compliant. Prove it. They've said it over and over. Okay. Why can't you say the same thing to them and say, look, OCR is going to ask me that. They've said it. They've told me over and over. They're going to say that to me. You can't just tell me you're in compliance. You have to prove it. I need you to prove it to me. Why not say that? And if they pitch a fit about it, that should tell you something. Mm-hmm. So ask people exactly. Anytime you're dealing with a vendor, whether it's your current vendor and you've never asked these questions, or it's somebody that you're considering doing business with, ask up front. Don't ask when you're negotiating the contract. Ask these questions up front before you even spend a lot of time. Exactly what makes your product or service HIPAA compliant, and exactly how does your product or service make HIPAA easy, if that's the case you're trying to tell me. So get very specific things, and feel free to post comments out on our social media, and we'll reply if you tell us what somebody's telling you, because we love hearing those stories. But exactly what makes you, your product or service, HIPAA compliant itself, and how can you help me be HIPAA compliant using those tools? So there's no silver bullet, like David said.
No. And just because they signed a BAA, that's not going to ultimately protect you. And honestly, your patients and your clients, they don't care. They don't care about a BAA. No. They don't care whose responsibility it's supposed to be. The fact is their information was breached. That's all they care about.
Yeah, definitely. And so when you say, make sure that it's signed a BAA, and we've talked about the BAAs, and we did an episode on the, who is a business associate and what kind of things they're supposed to be in their BAAs. And I wanted to end on this because you posted a great note about this in the forums, the flashback to 2009 and the IT company during the breakup with a client. Mm-hmm. And this was a classic example of why you want to make sure that people understand that, literally you could destroy people's lives by not doing your job and holding up your end of the ethical bargain that you're making when you have complete access to PHI. Mm-hmm. So tell the story, hit it, and that will be a good spot for us to end this.
Before we get on another soapbox.
Yeah, well, you might get on the soapbox with this one.
Well, there's not a lot of information in the report I saw, which I got from the Wall of Shame, but basically in 2009, there was an IT, of course, this was before HIPAA applied to IT vendors like it does now. But apparently, from what I could gather, the doctor's office, I'm saying it's a doctor's office, it could have been a dentist or whatever, but I don't recall the specific details. But the practice decided to go with a different IT vendor. The IT vendor going out, decided to remotely log in to the practice and proceeded to remove all user accounts, all backups, all encryption. I mean, just shut down everything that they were managing for this client, and which caused the breach of 2,000 patient records. And then, of course, the company coming in, the IT company coming in, was walking into an absolute mess. And it basically shut down this practice for a time being until they could get all this stuff worked out. And then they had to report it and deal with all that. But the point is, I guess there's two different points. I won't really focus on the IT point of it other than to say, if you're an IT vendor and you're listening to this podcast, if you have a breakup with a client, come on now, be more ethical and better than that. I won't go into any more than that. But if you're a client, if you're a practice, a dental office, whatever the case might be, make sure that when you're handing over the keys to your kingdom, that you have some way, form, method, agreement, whatever in place that defines how you're going to get those keys back if things go wrong. Whether that's because you found another vendor, you decided to downsize. I don't care what the reason is, but you need to have something in place, a policy, procedure, et cetera, that deals with how am I going to get all this control back that I've given this company, how I'm going to get all this data back that I've given this company or give them access to in such a way that ensures that the privacy and security of that data stays intact and that my patients are still cared for.
Indeed. And your BAA should, you need to make sure that you pull that out if you're going to break up with somebody and make sure that they hold up their end of the bargain.
Yeah.
So, and that goes back to why IT vendors are supposed to be business associates. They have complete control of everything. They can shut you down. So there we have it. We've looped back around to the soapbox.
So that's our show for today. So thanks for listening and hanging in with there. It was kind of a long one for today, but I think it was packed full of good information. And remember, as we talked about early on, you can review us on iTunes and share us out on your favorite social media platform. You can also find us at our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. You can also ask a question right there on our webpage, and we might even feature it in a future episode. So remember, HIPAA is not about compliance. It is about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.